Alex here with a video on high conflict child custody. In this video I'm going to cover with mental health evaluation. I kind of don't like using that phrase, but it was inspired by, I can't remember who, but I read a difference between evaluation and diagnosis, and it actually made a lot of sense to me. Obviously, when you go on, when you go online, or on any kind of community like Quora, also in the courtroom, you can't really bring up people's mental health if you don't have a diagnosis, because it's not really fair to them. You're not like an expert, you haven't gone to school, you don't know psychology and all that. So you can't really diagnose them. But going back to what I was saying earlier, you can evaluate them. And I didn't really understand what this was for the longest time until I wrote this answer on Quora, and then it kind of clicked in my head, and I was like, that must be what they mean by an evaluation. There were a few examples based on the articles that I read, like so when they evaluated like Adolf Hitler, obviously like the Allies couldn't just like go and get him and put him in a room and have a psychologist diagnose him. He would say, no, I'm not going to let you do that. So they had to evaluate him based on, whatever, speeches, mannerisms, stuff like that. So no, they didn't have a diagnosis, but they thought maybe he had this kind of mental health problem. And even though they don't have a diagnosis, they can sort of keep in mind what they think he has and sort of base their expectations, their reactions, his reactions on their theories. So anyway, let's get back into, high conflict child custody. And out of World War II, I wrote this answer on Quora, and I really wanted to share it with people because, especially since I'm kind of partnered, well, I'm not really partnered with, but I did an interview for Dwayne in Dad Surviving Divorce. I'll go ahead and post a link to his channel. And a lot of his viewers are in, high conflict child custody cases, and a lot of his viewers have exes that they say, who knows if it's true or not. I'm not saying they're liars, I'm just saying who knows, because, a lot of us aren't psychologists. We can only evaluate, which I'm about to get into when I go into detail. They say their ex has narcissistic personality disorder or borderline personality disorder or antisocial personality disorder. Some of them say psychopathic. Anyway, the point I'm going to make is this. If you have a diagnosis, obviously this is not really for you. If you have a diagnosis, you can get an expert witness who can go to court and say, Your Honor, they have been diagnosed with this personality disorder. Here's why they can't have custody. This is the problem with this person with this disorder having custody. This video doesn't apply to you. You're gonna go that route. Of course, an expert witness is really expensive, but anyway. What you have to do if you've evaluated your ex, number one, you can't bring it up. You can't bring it up in court. You can tell your lawyer maybe, and they can kind of keep that in the back of their mind. You cannot bring up what you think your opponent has unless you're asking for for them to be evaluated, which I don't think is really the greatest way to go. I really don't. You can say that your ex might have this personality disorder because of these 5 or 6 different things that they've done. And based on them maybe having that, and based on your allegations as to what they're doing that lines up with that disorder, you can ask them to actually be professionally examined. And that professional can then decide whether or not they're going to diagnose them. And then you can go the whole route that I mentioned earlier. Once you have a diagnosis, you bring an expert witness, they talk to the court and explain why they can't have custody or whatever the details are. I don't think that this is the best way to go because sometimes the expert that they go to might miss it, and so I think Dwayne had conducted an interview with Cordell, and Cordell said basically the same thing. So at this point, there's kind of a consensus going forward that when you evaluate your ex to have a personality disorder or some kind of disorder, keep it in your own mind, don't bring it up in court, and use that to sort of understand how they're going to react to you, and use that to sort of tailor your feelings regarding how they're treating you. Because if somebody who's healthy is disrespecting you, often our instinct is, well, I must be doing something wrong. This is a normal person and they're disrespecting me, or they're harassing me, or they're causing conflict. I must be doing something to sort of contribute to this, which is usually true with 2 neurotypical ordinary people. If there's a conflict, there typically is a little bit on both sides that's contributing to the conflict. Now that you've evaluated your ex and you think that they have this personality disorder, you can sort of figure out where it's coming from, and you can not get upset, not take the bait, and not do all these other things. More importantly, you can understand where the abuse and neglect is coming from, and you can keep an eye out for it, and you can focus on that when you go to court. So let's take this example. I think my ex has narcissistic personality disorder. I'm not going to bring it up in court, but I'm going to research this disorder and figure out how it works, and then I'm going to discover, oh, here's the false self. It's a construct that needs narcissistic supply to work. Oh, maybe that's why she calls me or texts me and starts all kinds of conflicts, because she wants me to take the bait and fight with her so she can garner negative narcissistic supply. So what they don't like is to be treated as unimportant or irrelevant. So if I don't want to feed into the beast, then what I need to do is show ambivalence, or dispassion. Instead of passion, show dispassion. These are the things I need to do. I think they have this, so I'm going to react this way. And then when I'm looking at her actions, and I'm noticing, here's the abuse, here's the neglect. So when I go to court, I don't say, Your Honor, she has a narcissistic personality disorder, give me custody. No. What I say is, look at these communications. These are conflict communications. Look, she was unable to cooperate to meet the needs of her child. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking this is probably because she has this disorder. But I'm not going to tell that to the court because I don't have a diagnosis. I have plenty of actions, though. And so I can show the court these actions that are causing problems. And based on these actions, the court could modify custody. No, I mean, the mental health thing is just kind of in the back of my mind. I'm not asserting it. Instead, I'm saying, look at what she's doing, the actions. The disorder itself is causing the actions. And the actions, in and of themselves, are enough to modify custody. So that's what I'm going to modify custody on. I'm not going to spend time trying to say she's got this disorder, because I'm just not sure. I'm not a professional. I just think based on my online research she is. And then the other crucial thing about this is understand that you're not an expert and be willing to change your mind when you see new evidence. And I'm going to actually bring up my own self in this. When I was first starting my custody case, I thought I was the reason why it was such a high conflict case. And this is pretty typical with personality disorder people. I thought I must be doing something wrong for this to be coming out this bad. But then later on I realized she's just not a good person. She can't put herself in my shoes. When I try and get her to think, how would you feel if I did this to you? She doesn't understand that. So she's not a good person. That's what I thought. Then after that, I started to think maybe she's got sociopathy, because I would do research online. And I was like, oh, look, lack of remorse, no empathy, which is actually no warm empathy, doesn't care about other people's feelings, can't see things from other people's perspectives. And I saw these things and I'm like, oh, maybe it's a sociopathy. And then so I kind of went in that direction. And it made it easier for me, because I was like, well, of course she doesn't, I'm not going to try and tell her to look at things from my point of view, because she just can't see that. I don't think she can, based on what I think she has. And then later on, I was like, oh wait, this might be antisocial personality disorder. And of course, this is me keeping it to myself. I'm not like, you need to lose custody because of this, because I know that the first thing the court's going to say is, you're not an expert, you're not a psychologist, and there's no diagnosis. It's not going to go anywhere. So I'm just keeping it in the back of my mind. Finally, after like another year or two, I read about narcissistic personality disorder, and I was like, this is what I think it is. And it's just like I said, be willing to change your mind, because you're not an expert and you might be wrong, And if you're not bringing it up in court, if you're not saying, I want you to modify custody because my ex is a narcissistic personality disorder person, then, I mean, there's no harm to the process. There's no harm to you in litigation, if you're not bringing that label up. And instead you're focusing on their actions. It's you're doing what you can with what you have. And it's, some people will say, oh, you need to just keep that out. You can't say, you can't think that your ex has these problems because you're not a professional. Well, that's not really fair either, because if there's all this conflict going on, it's not right for you to just bury your head in the sand and just not do any research and try and figure out why. Because frankly, it's not normal for there to be conflict over so many years in a child custody case. It's not normal. There's got to be something going on. There's got to be a mental health issue or something going on if you're in and out of court for 8 years nonstop. It's just not normal. So, I mean, the first thing you should do is do research and just, understand that you're not a professional and go at it from that perspective. So, anyway, I'll go ahead and finish it off. Once I landed on narcissistic personality disorder, a lot of things clicked for me, especially the Sam Vaknin videos that I looked at, because he just broke it down to like the atomic level, and it really connected and everything sort of lined up and it fit perfectly. And when I went to modify physical custody, did I say she had narcissistic personality disorder? No. No, I just remembered that in the back of my mind, and I brought up all of the things that she was doing, the actions, the conflict, the messages, the emails, the communications, the disputes, the dental care problem, the school problem. Those were the things that I brought up, and those were the things that I won on. So I really hope that going forward, people, I kind of hope that this is sort of a balance between people who are afraid to do any kind of mental health research because they're not a professional and they don't want to look bad. Which, no, you should do research and try to, understand how these mental health issues work, and just keep it in the back of your mind. And then the other people who are like, they have these problems, and I'm going to tell the judge, because that's going to blow up in your face. As I mentioned, you can go the expensive route, which is you can allege that they have a problem, and then based on those allegations, have them undergo treatment and see if a psychologist will diagnose them. But I just don't. I mean, I don't think it's reliable. Dwayne from Dad Surviving Divorce doesn't think it's reliable. Cordell, who he interviewed on his show, doesn't think it's the best way to go. It just comes down to the best way to go seems to be focusing on their actions, keeping the mental health issue in your mind to sort of figure out how to act and react, and also when it comes to court, focusing on their actions. Hopefully this video is useful. If anyone has any specific questions, go ahead and post it in the comments below. Smash the like button. See you guys next time. Thanks.